a FANRUN podcast network exclusive. Pleased to be joined by my boy SEC Michael Bratton, joining us. Where do you live, Mike? Are you in Nashville, or where are you at?
Yeah, I live in Nashville, right near the airport, a little area called Donaldson. I think it's the best part of Nashville, in my opinion.
You know, it's far out of the city, but you're close enough, and you get to kind of avoid the traffic. I always wish I was stopping in Donaldson when I travel to Nashville, but I realized I'm like, I got 30 more minutes to get to where I'm going. I thought you're in Nashville. I thought that was the case, but here in the States, I do think Tennessee, despite what the schedule makers said, or at least the TV executives putting LSU and Florida as the primetime game, I do think the biggest game in college football this weekend in Tennessee, in Knoxville, as Georgia comes to town.
Yeah, no, it should be a hell of a game. And, again, we're in an interesting time, right, where we don't have the East anymore. We don't have the West. We got a 12-team playoff. So I know you had me on here to hype up this game, but at the same time, it's like, I don't think it's the end-all be-all. And I've been talking all week on my show, given that the remainder of Tennessee's schedule, Bama doesn't look as tough. Florida, that's a damn house of horrors. So I think it'll be burnt to the ground by the time Tennessee gets there. I think regardless of what happens on Saturday, I'm way jumping ahead here, but regardless of what happens on Saturday, if Tennessee splits at Alabama, Oklahoma at home, I think Tennessee's going to the SEC championship. So I think the season already has really broken the Vols' favor.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we kind of had that same discussion on Talk Sports this morning. Not the same lens of making the SEC championship if you lose, because I do think that Tennessee, I would worry about tiebreakers, just dropping this one early, and you never know how that's going to shake out. But I did kind of have a similar thought of, I'm not burying Georgia if Tennessee beats them. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be no victory lap online. There's not going to be any dirt thrown on their grave, because A, Gunnar Stockton could improve. B, they could move to a better backup. C, any type of rematch you would have in the SEC championship or the college football playoff would almost assuredly not be in Knoxville. So, this game is nice. In a 14 playoff era, it would be a lot bigger. It's still gigantic here in Knoxville, but it's one of those I feel like is much bigger to Tennessee than it is Georgia, because of the safety net you kind of have with the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I just think that, again, you had me up here to hype up this game and Tennessee and all this, but I think the injury situation really favors Georgia here, because, I don't think it takes very much football IQ to say, Gunnar, he's not looked fantastic. He's looked okay, but first true road start, it's going to be a hell of an environment for him to be walking into. The game plan's got to be make Gunnar Stockton beat us. And can he do it? I don't know. But I sure as hell don't think he could. If Gerard McCoy's out there, he's 100%. If Ricky Gibson's out there, I would lean Tennessee, and not to mention some of the defensive linemen are a little banged up. So from an injury standpoint, I think it favors Georgia. So, that's something to consider going into this matchup.
Yeah, I think, McCoy, obviously the preseason All-American, the first round pick. He could probably never play another snap in college football and still be a borderline first round pick. Not having him is a big deal. Gibson, I don't see as vital in this game. I think Gibson's one of those depth pieces. As the season goes along, you might miss him, game 6, game 7, as guys start getting banged up. But in Knoxville, people have been really high on Colton Hood, the transfer coming in from Colorado. He's looked the part of a cornerback 1. He looked really, really good as a cornerback 2 with McCoy out there. And then you've had some young guys stepping up. So I do think there's a chance the corners can still hold up, against Georgia, especially if Stockton's going to play conservative. But yeah, if he's taking deep shot after deep shot, and Tennessee's trying the press coverage and sending a bunch of pressure, it does lend itself to some big plays, which if Georgia hits big plays, I think Tennessee's in trouble. I think your hope is that, like the Alabama game in 24, you're able to kind of limit that and keep that offense in check and do enough, offensively, defensively, and with the home field advantage to pull out a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen – actually, I haven't thrown out the graphics, so I don't think you would have seen it. But according to the numbers I've seen, Tennessee's defense is in like the 100s. So just god awful in explosive plays allowed, and they played ETSU and Syracuse, so that's a concern also going into this matchup. But Georgia is god awful in producing the explosive plays, so it's kind of like the movable object meeting the whatever that damn saying is. I can't think of it, but that'll be a true test going into this matchup. I was just talking with somebody that I think the team, I assume most people think he hates Alabama or Florida. I think it's Tennessee. I think Tennessee is the team he hates more than any other. So he always seems to get his damn team up for them Tennessee Vols, and he loves winning in Neyland Stadium. So that's going to be interesting as well. But, man, one guy we haven't even talked about, and I know you talk about him every day, but Joey Swagular back here, I mean, he looks like $1 million, a hell of a lot better quarterback than I thought he would be. So, this is a moment where he's already, I wouldn't call him a legend, but he'll start to be one if he beats Georgia.
He's a fan favorite right now already, just through 2 games. Like he is.
Yeah.
He's positioned himself. You add in the Nico drama and just the juxtaposition of the 2 families, where one family comes from California and they act like, they're doing us a favor for taking, the $8 million to come there. And then you have the Aguilar family where, like, the grandma's in the stands crying and the mom's like doing everything she can to hold back tears. And she's talking about how blessed they are. You have the dad talking about how blessed they are to, have been out of UCLA and been in this spot. So, like, that side of it has already earned him, like, fan favorite status. I think Legend gets held off until he gets that big moment, maybe on Saturday or on the road at Alabama or on the road at Florida or in the playoff. But, yeah, so far, so good for him. I want to go back a second. You talked about the explosive play stats. As someone who covers the league as a whole, as someone who kind of lives and breathes this day in, day out, at what point do you start looking at those stats as legit? Is 2 weeks of data enough for you? Because when you told me that stat about Tennessee's defense explosive plays, it doesn't really match up what I've seen and watched of the 2 teams. Like, I feel like a lot of that came in the second half, against Syracuse when Tennessee kind of had a comfortable lead. Like, I didn't watch that game feeling like Tennessee's defense was struggling with Syracuse. So I'm interested in at what point you feel confident looking at some of those big picture stats.
That's certainly fair. And when do I start to buy into them? I mean, really, to be honest with you, not till we're about halfway through the conference schedule.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's kind of how I feel too. So, like, I don't, maybe I have orange glasses on, but, like, I don't look at this Tennessee defense as overly susceptible to the big play.
Right now, I
do a pretty good job of that.
I just looked it up. They're 109th in the country in allowing 20 or more yards in a play. So that ain't good after ETSU and Syracuse. They're right there with Kentucky. But again, it's 2 games. It's not the end all be all, but it's just something to monitor, because that's huge for college. That's one of the most important stats, I think, is explosive plays. But one thing, I don't know if you've considered this all week, but what is the streak at? 8 in a row that Georgia's beaten Tennessee. It's always at the end of this, or roughly, the tail end of the season, the last month or so.
And it has been the last handful of years. Traditionally growing up, it was always kind of the game right after Florida, but they have kind of moved it to the back end of the season. Really since really like 7-8 years, I feel like.
Right. So every time, essentially, at least under Heupel, because that's all that really matters, and Kirby.
Yep.
Georgia has an identity, particularly on offense, and they have no identity right now. So I think that is also a factor going into this matchup, going on the road, Neyland Stadium, not knowing who you are on offense. And I'm sure you've heard it, because I've been asked, I don't even know, 24 times, is Georgia sandbagging? I mean, at this level, these teams are not sandbagging, but particularly if you go and watch Georgia play, particularly last week against Austin Peay. And I know there was weather issues, but no, there's a real concern with Gunnar Stockton, even from within the Georgia program, of why he's not taking the shots that are there. he has opportunities to throw it down, and he's checking down seemingly every time. Why? I don't know. But that tells me he's not trusting what he's seeing, and he's not trusting what he's seeing at home. What's that going to look like in Neyland Stadium? So, I think that's a major, major concern for Georgia heading into this matchup.
Yeah, the super secret playbook is always a message board favorite. I like to see that when a team is struggling. They're like, oh, we're holding stuff back. The good plays, they're coming. Trust us. The good plays, they're going to open it up. We used to talk about that a lot during the Jeremy Pruitt era. Like, hey, no, Chaney's just saving some plays. They'll dial it up. Whereas logically, you'd take a young quarterback like Stockton who needs some confidence. I would think you'd open up and get him some good reps and get him some stats and have him kind of flexing his muscles a little bit. Tennessee's done that a little bit with Joey Aguilar. Mike, as we head into this game, one has started a college football playoff game, kind of by necessity and injury. The other, was recruited over at UCLA after transferring there. Who do you have more confidence in this game on Saturday? Is it the 24-year-old Joey Aguilar, who's kind of lucky to be here? Not to be dismissive or disrespectful, but he wasn't supposed to be here, 4 months ago. Or Gunnar Stockton, who is, was kind of always in the plans at Georgia to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I don't even think it's debatable at this point in time. It's Joey Aguilar going into this matchup, and I know there's has been much made, John, about Gunnar Stockton and his truck with 300,000 miles. I don't know if I'm breaking news here, but that's not even his primary vehicle anymore. So I think even the legend that is Gunnar and his hard work and his old cowboy nature, that's a little bit of a facade here. So I think if there's one quarterback that's going to get exposed on Saturday, I don't think it's Joey Aguilar. I think it's Gunnar Stockton.
Well, how much do you buy into the coaching matchup then? Because if you tell me that Tennessee's got the better quarterback and home field advantage, 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, I'm going to take that. You know what I mean? I'm going to take the better quarterback. I'm going to take the home field advantage. But Kirby Smart, for my money, the best motivator in college football, the us against the world. He's so good at that. You talked about the Tennessee focus and hatred he has. I fully buy into it. I think he revels in owning Tennessee. I think he revels in owning Josh Heupel and that gimmick offense and kind of showing, hey, this is what real football looks like. Do you buy that as being too big of a detriment for Tennessee to overcome? What do you make of the coaching matchup here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's elite. I think Josh Heupel, anybody that says he's not top 10 in the country, I think they're fooling themselves. And hell, I think he's probably closer to 5 than he is 10. So Josh Heupel's elite, but to your point, I think Kirby's the best. So a little edge to Georgia. Going back to what we were talking about, sandbagging and saving plays and all this, I think Georgia. Now, maybe are they saving up some, exotic blitzes and things of that nature that they didn't have to break out? Perhaps. But Georgia is who they are. Josh Heupel is who he is. I don't think there's any secrets. It's going to come down to, one-on-one plays. There's going to be a lot of Tennessee receivers that got to make a play against Georgia defensive backs that they've simply not made over the years. I think that's going to be a critical point of this game. And yeah, I mean, I would give an edge to Georgia in the coaching matchup, but it's not significant because we haven't talked to Tim Banks either. I mean, I think he's, your audience knows he's done a hell of a job for Tennessee. And I mean, by some accounts, Tennessee is better on defense than they are offense. At least they were last year, and they at times look like it, this year as well. So, and Georgia fans, same year, same excuse. They want Mike Bobo gone. So what does that tell you about what they think of their offense after 2 games here and really last year too, which I don't know if you caught the Miami Notre Dame game, but Carson Beck looked pretty good, didn't he, compared to last year in Athens? So maybe there's something to it. Maybe Tennessee, at least when Georgia has the ball and Tennessee's on defense, I think Tennessee has a coaching edge. So, maybe it's a push. These are 2 of the best coaching staffs in the country and certainly the SEC.
Well, I will say Bobo carved up Tennessee pretty good last year, especially, second quarter on. He's had some pretty good game plans against Tim Banks' offense or Tim Banks' defense, excuse me. And And Bobo's doing a good job of motion and getting, tight ends across the middle of the field open. And you hope that Tennessee can counter that. I will say, we talked about the streak and Kirby's dominance over Heupel. I do feel like this is the first time, though, inside Neyland Stadium where the teams are at least comparable. Like, I don't think it was fair to judge 2021. And quite frankly, I don't think it was fair to judge in 23 with Joe Milton either. I feel like this is the best chance by far, Tennessee's had against Georgia inside Knoxville.
Yeah, and to your point, I looked at the stats we referenced on our show, that SEC podcast yesterday. I don't have them in front of me, but every year in this matchup, Tennessee's gotten better at running the football. The first year, Heupel versus Kirby, I mean, it was dreadful. It was like 250 rushing yards for Georgia. It was like 30 for Tennessee. And each year they've got progressively better until last year. Tennessee actually outrushed Georgia for the first time in this series with Heupel and Kirby. So, of course, again, it was lopsided because you're right, because Carson Beck carved him up. Mike Bobo, they couldn't get any pressure on old Carson Beck. If Gunner, if he has 300 passing yards, Georgia will win, right? But I don't think there's a shot in hell that happens. So my point being, I think Heupel is getting better and better at manufacturing a run game against Georgia. Now they've got to hit these deep shots. Again, go back to these Tennessee receivers who are largely unproven against good competition anyway. They have to make these plays that are going to be there, and that's going to decide who wins this football game.
Yeah, I think the Tennessee wide receivers definitely unproven, but I do think the hope is that they're more explosive. Hey, you'll trade a Brew McCoy with 5 years of experience who has limited explosiveness for a sophomore Mike Matthews, who's a 5-star that looks like he can run and outrun Georgia's defensive backs and have some of that wiggle that you see of the elite receivers. So that's an added wrinkle here to go along with Heupel's offense. And I do think you talk about that rushing getting better each year. I do think the offensive line that Heupel has this year looks to be the best he's had during his tenure as well. And that's without 5-star David Sanders, who Tennessee's hoping to get back and hopefully get acclimated and getting some reps in this game.
Yeah, and I certainly hope that he plays this weekend, even though he's not seen much action. I would play him because this is why you pay a guy like that. It's why you bring him on. Now, is he ready? Nobody knows, but
sink or swim, baby. Get out there. Let's figure it out.
Right, and that's what this game is. It's talent over everything else, and he is probably. Even Lance, I would throw Lance Hurd in there. I think David Sanders is your most talented offensive lineman. So I'd play him if he's healthy.
You talked about Josh Heupel as a top 10 guy, maybe borderline top 5 guy. And I think to me, that's the biggest thing on the line. You talked about the stakes of this game, maybe not actually living up to what Tennessee fans are trying to push them to, the hype, maybe not quite being as important as some of us are acting. But I do think for Josh Heupel, winning this game is one of the last 2 things I think he really has to do. He has to beat a rival on the road. He hasn't done that with, Alabama or Georgia or Florida. He's got 2 opportunities this year, but he also ain't beat Georgia, period. So like he can check that box off. And I think nationally that would get him in that conversation, because all of a sudden you look up and say, well, he did win 30 games the last 3 years. He did take his team to the playoff. I know we keep trying to say all these other schools are going to be better and Tennessee's going to be down, but man, he did just take this quarterback off the trash heap and turn him into a pretty good quarterback. And hey, maybe that Joe Milton and Nico thing were more of the aberrations versus the expectation. And I think a win here for Heupel would get both he and Tennessee into that next level. Tennessee, the way I've been saying it, Mike, is they had their we're back moment against Alabama in 22. Like, hey, we're busted on the scene. We're back. The program's in good hands. We're not dead anymore. This is a rivalry again. We can be a team that wins games. I think beating Georgia is hey, we're not only are we back, but like we're here as a sustained top 10 program that should get the same respect. It's been driving me crazy that you look at all the playoff teams last year, Mike. 8 of them got the respect they deserved in terms of like being back next year. You look at Clemson and Notre Dame and Georgia and Texas. All those teams got ranked kind of in the top 15. Tennessee got treated down like with Indiana and like SMU of like, cute little story. Good job, everybody. You broke in, but back to number 24 you go. Despite Tennessee, recruiting at a pretty good level and coaching at a pretty good level and having a lot of talent, I think beating Georgia gets you that national respect too and changes that narrative completely for moving forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as Tennessee got eliminated, all I heard was, "Well, damn, they got there because of the schedule." You know what I mean? And then
exactly
that's so stupid. And then people that are just completely clueless, they thought Nico was responsible for that. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. And I think early in this season, we've already showcased. I mean, I was down on Tennessee. I'll be fully transparent. I thought with all the losses, with having a quarterback change, and another thing that really bugged me was all the Boo Carter situation. These are just like little red flags of where's this locker room? You're replacing so much talent. I thought that I picked them to beat Syracuse, but in the back of my mind, I was like, ugh, well, I've seen this before where Tennessee comes out here and blows it, right? But I should have not been there, John, because that's the old battered VOLS syndrome, and I feel like everything Josh Heupel has done since he's been in Knoxville has proven that whatever demons we have because of Pruitt and Butch and Dooley. I mean, it was just the same old, same old. It didn't seem to matter who the coach was. It was just it was repeat with Tennessee and their failures, and he has pretty much downplayed that immediately and smashed all of that. So I think it's a new era. I think I'm done being a battered Vol over here. So can Tennessee win? Hell yeah, they can win. And I don't even know if it'd be an upset.
No, yeah, it's just Lane Kiffin loses his quarterback. Nobody really expected Ole Miss to take a step back. Ty Simpson takes over for Milroe. Nobody really expected Alabama to take a step back. They thought they'd get better. Same for Carson Beck leaving and Gunnar Stockton coming. Like, no one had those questions, but you lose Nico, who, statistically didn't do anything special. And everyone's like, oh, God, this guy's falling for Josh Heupel. If Tennessee wins, how have they done it? How will they have won if they win on Saturday?
Mm-hmm. I think, aside from the obvious, turnovers and things of that nature, I think what's going to dictate this game, John, is first down on both sides of the football, because you've got to keep Georgia's pass rushers from just teeing off on Joey Aguilar. I think that'll be paramount to Tennessee having success. And then the exact same on the opposite side of the football. If Georgia's having success on first down and setting up manageable third downs to where you don't know if they're going to run or pass, I think they're going to have a lot of success on Tennessee. You want to make Gunnar beat you in these third and mediums, third and longs, and make him do it consistently. Make him go the length of the field. For anybody that missed it, I mean, there was a terrible end of half sequence in their last game against Austin Peay where they literally had the ball inside the 1 yard line, multiple attempts to run it in on Austin Peay. They couldn't do it. Austin Peay stuffed them. And the first half ran out. Georgia didn't even score any points. Now, they had a lot of success on Austin Peay running up and down. So I'm not saying they got no push the whole game, but that's just evidence right there, particularly after last year. I don't know if you're aware, Georgia was 15th in the SEC in rushing the football. That was a huge point of emphasis this offseason in Athens. You struggle at times to run it against Austin Peay at home. You were 15th in the SEC last year in rushing. This may not be the same old dominant dogs that we're used to.
Well, that kind of ties into the point I had about Stockton, right? Where you wanted him to you should have wanted him to get easy reps and really have stats that give you confidence. I think with the run game, I didn't know they were 15th in the SEC last year running the ball. You would think that they would have really reveled in the opportunity of padding those stats against the Austin Peays of the world to show this physical toughness and the return to domination. And yeah, that end of half, series they had where they got stopped, that could be pretty telling when you look at the foreshadowing. All right, let's ask a couple questions. I'll get you out of here, Mike. I appreciate your time. If you haven't already, go like and subscribe that SEC podcast wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube. Mike's been a friend of Talk Sports, a friend of Cody for a long time. I met Mike through Cody, so we've been friends at least digitally now for 7 or 8 years. Always appreciate you taking time to talk with us. Has life changed for you since being on the Netflix documentary?
You would be amazed, and I think it was off air. We were talking about losing weight. You would be amazed how many people reached out to me and said, "Man, I didn't know you were that fat." Or my wife says, "Hey, you look." There's this guy I always get. He's one of the. I guess he used to date one of the Kardashians. I literally don't know the guy's name.
Okay, like, yeah, Scott Disick. I see it now that you mention it.
Yeah, they're like, "You look exactly like a fat Disick or whatever," and I'm like, "Perfect." Like I got 50 of those at least. So that's the main change. But it was pretty. I'll tell you this: it was pretty awesome. Two things about that. They flew me out. We interviewed in Charlotte. They got me first class, which I've never flown first class in my life, but it was only a 40-minute flight. But and free alcohol, and I was like, wow, this must be like what it's like to be, working something like this. And then on the way back, I was like, I can't wait to get first class the drinks. Back of the damn plane I went. They hooked it up on the way there. I thought that was pretty funny, but not on the way back. And then they debuted the first episode at SEC Media Days, and they have like a theater there. It was really nice. And it was me and Shane, cousin Shane. We were down there for Media Days, and we walked out, and they hold SEC Media Days at a hotel essentially, and there was like a group of like 12 women, and they were like, "Oh, it's a guy from Netflix." I was like, "That's so awesome! Yay, come hang out!" And we didn't, which I've been thinking about it every moment of my life. But yes, we didn't, because Shane's a married man, and we would never do such a thing. But that was pretty awesome, and I thought my life may be like that, as soon as the Netflix documentary launched. And
you needed me and Cody. You needed me and Cody down there with you. We had planned on going, but we backed out at the last minute. We had too much stuff going on here with Station. We changing the studio over, and we were like, we ain't got time to go down there.
I could have had us 4 women apiece after that damn thing. You know what?
That's good math. 12 divided by 3. Good job. Last time we talked, you picked Alabama. Alabama was your pick in the SEC, and I believe to win the national championship. Stubbed their toe. Obviously, got their ass kicked, by Florida State. Are you out on Alabama? Are you holding, some of your stock, thinking they can fix things?
Oh no, I'm completely out. We got to fire DeBoer. I did say that as well. I said if he loses week 1, we got to fire him. I think it was Jeremy Foley that says, "Hey, if you're going to do something eventually, you might as well just do it." The former Florida AD, and it's going to cost him a pretty penny, but just based on what we've seen so far from DeBoer, it's up and down, up and down. I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Georgia here in a couple weeks and then turn around and lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, that's literally what happened last year, and they look like $1 million week 2. They look like dog poo week 1. You know what I mean? So, I think that's what we're getting out of Alabama, and I don't think they're ever going to win anything of significance under Kalen DeBoer.
SEC Mike, I appreciate you. Tell the audience your schedule, how often the podcasts are dropping, so they can know and they can lock in.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. So we go live every night at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. And then we do a lunch show every day as well. But the times are random. They're from like 10 to 1. It's kind of random. And
you got to turn on your notifications, right? Just when it goes live, you get the notification. That's how you do it, okay?
Yep. And then Shane does it in the morning, 7:30 a.m., 6:30 East Central. And then we started, I don't know if you guys have ever done this before, but we've been watching the games live on YouTube on Saturday. We pick a game. I think we're going to do Tennessee, Georgia this week. And man, those are a lot of fun. I didn't realize how many people would be down to do that, but we get hammered on those.
Yeah, I was going to say I dabbled in that a little bit back in 2017. That was just Twitch, though. It was just me putting my cell phone up in a room and just watching on Twitch with people, and got to see the Felipe Franks, Hail Mary to the walk-off to beat Tennessee, and that was kind of the last one we did on those, I think. It was short-lived after that.
Well, yeah, maybe it's a good idea you don't do them anymore. You may be bad luck. You know what?
All right, Mike, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Everyone go subscribe, like that SEC podcast. Continue success, and good luck with the women. Scott Disick, they still love him. He hasn't really been with the Kardashians in a long, long time, but they still love him. So you're on the path to something good there, brother.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. No clue who that is, but he
I
sounds
see it
like,
now.
like a
Now that you
good-looking
mention
guy.
it, now that you mention it, I see it. Once you said that, I was like, oh yeah, he does look like Scott. All right, Mike.
Well,
Talk to you later, brother.
take care.